Okay, welcome everyone to the deep dive. This is where we take the sources you send us and, well, we try to pull out those key bits of information you need.
Exactly, helping you make sense of the things you're encountering.
And today's deep dive is really focused. A listener sent in not a bunch of articles or anything, but just one single question.
Just one. So our mission here is pretty specific. Take only this question, look at the options it gives, and really unpack what it's asking about, the physical parts of an ecosystem.
Right, based only on what's presented in that question and those choices.
It's all about understanding the distinction the source itself is trying to make.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's such a foundational question, isn't it, about how we classify things in the natural world.
It really is. And sometimes these seemingly simple questions, they actually force you to think quite precisely.
Okay, so let's get into it. What's the source actually giving us?
Okay, so it's one question, four multiple choice options. The question itself is, which one is a physical component of an ecosystem?
Simple enough. And the options.
The options are A is air, B is fungi, C is humus, and D is bacteria.
Air, fungi, humus, bacteria. Okay. And the key term is physical component.
Right, physical.
So in ecology, usually when we talk about ecosystem components, we often split them into like living and non-living, right? Biotic and abiotic.
Exactly. Biotic is the living stuff, plants, animals, microbes. Abiotic is the non-living stuff, water, sunlight, temperature, rocks, and crucially, air and parts of the soil structure.
So physical component here sounds a lot like it's pointing towards the abiotic side of things, the non-living environment.
I think that's the most natural reading, given the options. It's asking us to pick the non-living element from the list.
All right, let's quickly sort through these options then. Option B, fungi.
Fungi. Definitely living, right? They're organisms, part of the kingdom, fungi. Hugely important decomposers, but biotic, living.
Okay, so B is out if we're looking for physical, meaning non-living. What about D, bacteria?
Same deal, really. Bacteria are microorganisms, single-celled but very much alive. Also critical biotic components, driving nutrient cycles and all sorts, but living.
Right, so B and D, fungi and bacteria, they're on the living side of the ledger. That leaves us with A, air, and C, humus. Air seems, well, pretty straightforwardly non-living, doesn't it?
It does. Air, the mix of gases like nitrogen, oxygen, CO2. It's a classic abiotic factor. It's just part of the physical environment. It's not alive itself.
Okay, so A looks like a strong contender for a physical component, but then there's C, humus. Now, humus is, well, it's complicated, sort of.
It is a bit more nuanced, yeah. Humus is that dark, stable organic matter you find in soil. It's what's left after plants and animals decompose over a long time.
So it comes from living things, but the humus itself, It isn't alive anymore, is it?
No, it's not. It's non-living organic matter.
Yeah.
And it's really important for the soil's physical structure, water retention, nutrient holding, all very physical properties. Soil itself is often considered a mix of abiotic, minerals, water, air, and biotic, roots, microbes, components, and humus is a key part of that structure.
So we have air, clearly non-living and inorganic. And we have humus, non-living but organic matter derived from life, contributing to the physical soil structure.
Right. Both are technically non-living in their current state.
But the question just asks for a physical component, and it gives us these four specific choices. It sets up a contrast, doesn't it? Fungi and bacteria, clearly organisms.
This is air and humus, which are non-living materials found in the environment. It seems the source is really pushing for that fundamental distinction, organism versus non-living environmental factor.
And maybe, given that choice, air is presented as the sort of most unambiguously physical, non-living thing. It's not derived from life in the same immediate way humus is. It's just the atmosphere.
That could be the logic the source is guiding us towards. By putting clear living things, B and D, against clear non-living things, A and C, and asking for a physical component, perhaps the most straightforward, universally accepted abiotic factor among the choices is the intended answer. Air fits that perfectly.
Yeah, humus, while non-living and physically important, its organic nature might make it slightly less purely physical in the sense of abiotic mineral environment compared to air, especially in a basic classification question like this.
Exactly. The question, through the options it provides, seems designed to test that very basic classification. Living organism versus the fundamental non-living environment. Air is the clearest example of the latter in this specific list.
So if we stick strictly to what this source gives us the question and these specific options, it seems to steer us towards identifying air as the intended physical component.
That seems like the most direct interpretation based only on the material provided. It highlights that core contrast between life and the non-living stage it performs on.
And understanding that contrast really is step one, isn't it? Before you can understand how ecosystems work, you need to know what the different pieces are.
Absolutely. You need to distinguish the actors from the stage, so to speak. The living organisms from the physical and chemical setting.
It makes you think about the different jobs things do, like air provides gases, water's the solvent, soil provides anchorage. They're the conditions for life.
hmm They enable life, but they aren't alive themselves. Though, of course, life then changes those physical conditions. Think about how plants release oxygen, or how decomposition builds soil.
Which brings us back to humus. It's all interconnected.
It is a constant interplay. Physical factors shape life, and life shapes the physical environment.
But it all starts with being able to make that first distinction, the one this listener's question prompted us to think about.
Precisely. That simple-looking question forces a foundational classification.
Okay, well, that was actually a really interesting deep dive from just one question. We looked at the options air, fungi, humus, bacteria, and worked through how the source likely wanted us to distinguish the physical component.
Yeah, the key takeaway, based purely on the source's setup, is that contrast between the living organisms like fungi and bacteria and the non-living environmental elements like air or even humus. Physical pointed towards non-living.
And getting that basic classification down is just so fundamental if you want to understand the ecosystems around you, isn't it? Whether you're looking at a huge forest or just, the soil in a pot.
It gives you the basic vocabulary, the building blocks for understanding those complex interactions.
Definitely. So building on what the source made us think about, here's something for you to consider. How does classifying things, physical, living, maybe predator, prey, producer, decomposer, how does putting these labels on things change how you actually see and understand the connections in the natural world around you?
Yeah, and beyond just living versus non-living, what other ways of categorizing parts of an ecosystem might be really important for understanding how it all fits together?
Something to think about next time you're out observing the world.